Picture this. You're a foreign visitor stepping off a plane, and you are about to experience the modern Seoul subway system for the very first time.
Oh, yeah. It's quite an introduction to the city.
It really is. I mean, you walk down into the station, and it honestly does not feel like public transit. It feels like a futuristic transit utopia.
Right, totally.
You're standing on this spotless platform, and you're perfectly safe behind these sleek, floor-to-ceiling glass screen doors. You pull out your phone, and you instantly connect to, like, high-speed, free Wi-Fi underground. You step into a public restroom, and it's practically hotel grade.
It's just seamless, quiet, incredibly efficient.
Exactly. It feels like it was beamed down from a highly advanced civilization.
Yeah.
But what blew my mind when reading through our source material for today's deep dive is that this sleek, futuristic system was born out of absolute desperation. I mean, the origins of this massive underground network are just dramatic, improvised, and honestly laced with tragedy.
Oh, absolutely. It is the ultimate infrastructural underdog story. And it's actually incredibly timely for you to be learning about this since the system is celebrating its 50th anniversary right now.
Oh, wow, 50 years.
Yeah, half a century. And to truly appreciate what you're looking at when you see those sleek screen doors, we have to pull you back to the 1960s and 70s.
Right.
Because back then, South Korea had virtually no money. They certainly didn't have the technology to build something like this. The contrast is just jarring.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because looking at the modern Seoul subway and then reading the history in these sources, it's like looking at a brand new, ultra-sleek smartphone, only to realize it was originally forged with a hammer and a rusty anvil in a scrapyard.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. Like, where does a country with no money even begin to tackle a massive underground rail system?
Well, they began because they were literally backed into a corner by a massive demographic explosion. To understand the origin, you have to look at the sheer desperation of Seoul in the 1960s. The context here is a city that was just bursting at the seams.
Right, the population boom.
Exactly. Due to rapid nationwide urbanization, the population of Seoul doubled in a single decade. It went from 2.44 million people in 1960 to 5.52 million by 1970.
Man, that is basically shoving the entire population of Chicago into a city that was not built for it, all in the span of 10 years.
Yeah.
The existing infrastructure must have been completely paralyzed.
Paralyzed is the exact word. I mean, the city had these old streetcars, right? The tram network.
Right.
But they were actually dismantled in 1968. They were incredibly slow, constantly breaking down, and they were just getting in the way of the booming car traffic that the new middle class was bringing in.
Okay, so they yanked out the trams.
They did. But removing those trams without a high-capacity replacement left the city in a state of just gridlocked, exhaust-choked traffic hell. A commute could take hours.
Jeez. So the obvious answer for any major city is to build a subway. But our sources highlight this fierce, almost violent opposition to the idea within the South Korean government.
Oh, it was intense.
Right. You had economic ministers literally screaming about it in meetings. The deputy prime minister, Kim Hak-ryol, was famously shouting that the country will be ruined if they tried to build it.
He really did. They were terrified.
They were terrified of taking on massive foreign debt, which they knew would cause runaway inflation in a nation that was desperately poor.
You know, you have to remember, economically speaking, they were entirely justified in that fear.
Really?
Yeah. The government's policy at the time was heavily focused on tight fiscal austerity. The idea of taking out massive, high-interest foreign loans just to dig an underground train.
When the country was barely industrialized.
Exactly. It seemed completely reckless. They were trying to build factories and export goods, not, pour billions of won into a dark hole in the ground.
Well, I have to push back here on behalf of those panicked economic ministers.
Go for it.
If the country was practically broke, wasn't taking on massive foreign debt for a subway kind of like maxing out a high-interest credit card to buy a luxury sports car just to show off.
That's how a lot of them saw it.
Right. I mean, shouldn't they have focused on basic housing or food security or at least building surface-level roads first?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to realize that this was not just a domestic infrastructure debate.
Okay, what was it then?
This was the height of the Cold War. Geopolitics dictated absolutely everything on the Korean peninsula. And the ultimate immediate catalyst for the Seoul subway was actually North Korea.
Wait, North Korea forced South Korea to build a subway? How does that even work?
Well, in 1973, Pyongyang opened its own subway system. They beat Seoul to it.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, and in the context of the Cold War regime competition, where both sides were trying to prove their economic system was superior, this was an existential blow to South Korea's pride.
Right, it was a bad look.
Very bad. Add to that the advice of Ambassador Lee Hoo-rak, who pointed out to President Park Chung-hee that literally every major respected global city had a subway.
It was a hallmark of a modern nation.
Exactly. So President Park finally forced the issue and just approved the project.
But hold on, they risked bankrupting a newly industrializing nation just because Pyongyang built one first. That sounds terrifying for the finance ministers.
It was terrifying.
To risk hyperinflation and economic ruin just for a geopolitical flex?
It was a massive financial gamble, no doubt about it. But to the leadership at the time, regime survival and national pride were indistinguishable from economic survival.
Oh.
If the world saw the South as falling behind the North, foreign investment might dry up entirely. They felt they had to prove they could outdevelop the North, no matter the immediate fiscal danger.
Okay, so they get the green light through sheer political willpower, but they still don't have the money, the local expertise, or the heavy machinery.
Nope, nothing.
Enter Mayor Yang Tak-sik, who ends up leading the charge for Line 1. The citizens nicknamed him the Mole Mayor, right?
Yes, the Mole Mayor. Because he was out on the construction sites so often, literally covered in dirt, inspecting the trenches.
That's amazing.
He was incredibly dedicated. He had previously been the head of the railroad authority, so he understood the necessity of heavy rail better than anyone else in the government.
Which was probably crucial.
Absolutely. And he needed every ounce of that grit because the engineering challenges were a total nightmare. Remember, they were relying heavily on foreign technical advisors, mostly Japanese, just to figure out the basic physics of urban tunneling.
Right, and the construction method itself was incredibly primitive compared to today.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't have those giant automated tunnel boring machines that chew neat little circular tubes deep underground, while city life just continues normally up above.
Not at all.
The sources say they use the cut-and-cover method for Line 1, which is exactly what it sounds like, but I don't think people realize how violent that process is for a city.
It's incredibly disruptive.
You literally rip open the main streets of the city from the surface, dig a massive, gaping trench, lay the concrete and the tracks, and then put a roof over it and pave a road back on top.
Just imagine the chaos. For over 3 years, they essentially gutted the center of Seoul.
3 years of that.
Yeah. The noise, the mud, the horrific traffic disruption. It was an open wound through the heart of the capital. And because they were carving just below the surface rather than deep in the bedrock, they had to navigate the city's existing footprint.
Oh, I bet.
Every water main, every building foundation was just in the way, which leads to one of the most infamous engineering workarounds in the whole system.
The screeching curve.
Yes.
If you are a foreign visitor and you happen to ride Line 1 between City Hall and Jonggak stations, you will notice this immediately.
You can't miss it.
The train suddenly slows down to a crawl-like 30 kilometers per hour, which is barely a fast run for a human. And this deafening metal-on-metal screeching sound just fills the car.
Yeah, it's super loud.
The track there bends at a near 90-degree angle. It's the sharpest curve in the entire Korean rail network. Why on earth would engineers intentionally build such a dangerous-looking, screeching bottleneck into a brand-new system?
It comes right back to that cut-and-cover method.
Oh, okay.
To make a smooth, gentle curve that a train can take at full speed, you have to dig a wide arc. With cut and cover, that means demolishing everything on the surface above that wide arc.
Right, which they obviously couldn't do.
Exactly. And sitting right in the path of the ideal curve was the Dong-A Ilbo newspaper building, which is now the Ilman Museum.
Oh, wow.
They simply could not afford, either financially or politically, to seize and tear down that major building. So the engineers were forced to physically bend the underground tracks around the building's foundation.
That is insane.
It created a razor-thin curve with a radius of just 136 to 140 meters. It was a brutal compromise born of pure necessity, and you can still hear the wheels screaming against the rails because of it today.
It's almost comical. They literally bent a multi-ton commuter train route around a basement.
They did what they had to do.
But modern buildings weren't the only obstacles. They had to protect ancient history, too. The route went right past priceless cultural assets, specifically the Namdaemun and Hunganjeomun gates.
Right, and this is a fascinating engineering problem. Ancient stone structures are incredibly vulnerable to constant
Because
microvibrations.
they're just stacked stone, basically.
Exactly. The shock waves from heavy construction and later the daily rumble of hundreds of heavy steel trains would have slowly vibrated the mortar and stone of those ancient gates to dust.
So what do they do?
Well, the engineers had to get creative. They imported massive amounts of cork.
Cork. Like wine bottle cork.
Yep. They actually built specialized anti-vibration walls out of cork to absorb the kinetic shock waves in the soil. They even physically relocated the planned Dongdaemun station further away from its original intersection just to ensure the historical gate wouldn't be compromised.
Using cork to save a dynasty's architecture from a modern train, that is just brilliant.
It really is.
So they fight through the budget crises, the political screaming matches, the mud, the cork walls, and they finally reach opening day, August 15th, 1974.
Yeah.
This was supposed to be a day of absolute triumph for the Molnair and the whole nation. But the sources paint a very somber, chilling scene instead.
Because it was a day of national tragedy.
Yeah.
August 15th is National Liberation Day in Korea. It's a massive, joyous holiday. But just 1 hour before the grand subway ribbon-cutting ceremony was supposed to happen, gunshots rang out at the National Theater where the main events were being held.
Oh, man.
First Lady Yuk Young-soo was assassinated by a gunman.
The entire country is instantly thrown into shock and mourning. All celebrations are canceled. The Mole mayor, Yang Tak-sik, who had poured his absolute life and soul into this project, takes responsibility for the security failure in his city and resigns immediately.
It's devastating.
It's devastating.
It's a profound historical juxtaposition. The greatest infrastructural leap in the city's history, the moment they finally joined the ranks of modern global capitals, is forever tied to one of its darkest mornings.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Despite the tragedy, despite the canceled celebrations and the architect of the project resigning in disgrace, the train still had to run.
They had promised the people a subway.
Right. And there was this powerful detail in the sources about the first driver of that inaugural train, a man named Jo Sang-ho.
I love this story.
He's sitting in the cab, ready to pull out of Seoul Station, and a Japanese technical advisor reaches over and puts his hand on the brake, trying to guide him.
Uh-huh.
And Jo Sang-ho proudly, physically brushes the advisor's hand away and says, in Japanese, "I am the driver."
Okay.
He wanted to prove that a Korean was driving Korea's first subway train.
That specific moment encapsulates the entire spirit of the project. It was about autonomy. It was about proving to themselves, to the North, and to the world that they could operate this highly complex machinery themselves. And the success of that first line, which initially was just 9 stations over less than 8 kilometers, was immediate.
The public just got it.
Overnight, the public realized almost immediately that this was the future.
But Line 1, as historic as it was, didn't actually solve the core problem, did it? I mean, the population was still entirely crammed north of the river in the old city.
Right, the congestion was still terrible.
To actually fix the congestion, they couldn't just move people faster through the old neighborhoods. They had to physically move the city's center of gravity. That required a radically different approach.
Precisely. And that transition brings us to the new mayor, Gu Jachin.
Ah, the bulldozer.
Exactly. The citizens affectionately called him the bulldozer. And the bulldozer took one look at the existing traditional plans for expanding the subway, which were just basic, straight lines radiating out from the center like spokes on a wheel.
Pretty standard urban planning.
Totally standard. And he completely scrapped them. He threw out years of urban planning.
Wow.
In 1975, Mayor Gu literally took a colored pencil to a map of Seoul, and in about 20 minutes, he hand-drew a massive 48.8-kilometer circular route.
Okay, wait, I'm sorry. I have to stop you there because the sheer audacity of this is baffling.
It sounds crazy, I know.
He drew a 50-kilometer transit loop in 20 minutes with a colored pencil. Did he just eyeball the geography? How does a literal doodle become the foundation of a modern metropolis?
It sounds incredibly reckless, almost arrogant, right? But Mayor Gu was actually operating on a very specific, advanced urban planning philosophy called the 3-core city concept.
Okay, what's that?
He knew that Seoul could not survive if everything remained jammed into the old downtown area north of the Han River. So his 20-minute circle intentionally connected 3 distinct areas.
Which were?
The old historic downtown, the industrial hub of Yeongdeungpo, and a massive, totally undeveloped tract of farmland and mud south of the river called Gangnam.
Gangnam. As in the global luxury capital today.
The very same.
The place with the endless neon skyscrapers, the fashion houses, the center of K-pop, it was mud and farmland, and he just drew a circle through it.
It was completely undeveloped. But this is where the mechanism of transit-oriented development kicks in. By drawing a massive circular track, you create equal access hubs all along the perimeter.
Oh, I see.
It acts like a lasso, dragging economic development outward. Laying that track incentivized real estate developers to build around the new stations in the empty south.
Because suddenly it's accessible.
Exactly. It redistributed the population geographically because people could suddenly live south of the river and commute anywhere on the loop. That single, unorthodox decision to build a circle rather than straight lines laid the exact architectural and demographic blueprint for the megacity of Seoul as it exists today.
That is a brilliant insight. Transit isn't just about moving people through a city, it's the tool that physically shapes where the city grows.
Yeah, exactly.
A colored pencil circle essentially willed Gangnam into existence. So, Line 2 is a massive success. It becomes the most heavily used line. And from there, the ambition just explodes, right? They start planning Lines 3 and 4.
They do, but the scale of the ambition quickly outstripped the available government funds. Lines 3 and 4 were originally supposed to be built and operated by private companies, specifically massive conglomerates like Daewoo.
Oh, okay. Let the private sector handle it.
Right, but when the private sector actually looked at the astronomical construction costs and then looked at the reality of keeping ticket prices low enough for the average citizen to afford, the math didn't work.
They couldn't turn a profit.
Exactly. The private companies panicked and backed out.
So the government is left holding the bag for these massive new lines.
Completely. This forced the government to step back in and create a massive public entity, the Seoul Metropolitan Subway Corporation, just to handle the sheer scale of the network.
Makes sense.
They realized that public transit on this scale, at least in its infancy, had to be a publicly subsidized utility, not a for-profit venture.
And it is a good thing the public sector took over, because the engineering only got wilder from there. When they built Line 5, they didn't just build bridges over the water.
No, they didn't.
They dug incredible tunnels straight underneath the Han River between Uenaru and Mapo. I mean, I can't even fathom how you hold back a major river while you are digging a train tunnel beneath it.
It was an engineering marvel. They had to deal with immense water pressure and the constant threat of catastrophic flooding.
I would be terrified.
Oh, for sure. They couldn't just dig through the soft riverbed either. They had to blast through the hard bedrock deep underneath the river.
How did they not flood the whole thing?
They used specialized shield tunneling machines and advanced grouting techniques. Basically, they injected cement into the cracks in the rock at extremely high pressure to seal the tunnel walls and prevent the river water from seeping in and drowning the workers.
It's just nonstop problem solving. And eventually, they even figured out how to bring the private sector back in safely with Line 9, right?
Yes, decades later, they pioneered a private funding model called Build Transfer Operate, or BTO, for the high-speed Line 9.
How does that work?
In this model, private companies pay to build the infrastructure, but they immediately transfer ownership to the city.
Okay.
In exchange, the private companies get the exclusive right to operate the line and collect the fares for a set number of years to recoup their investment and make a profit.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, it was a much more sophisticated way to fund expansion without bankrupting the city.
Okay, so the engineering is undeniably phenomenal. But honestly, as fascinating as the tunnels and the funding models are, the cultural impact of this system is what really stands out to me in these sources.
Oh, I agree. The cultural transformation is perhaps the most profound legacy of the system. You have to remember how entirely unfamiliar this technology was to the public at first. The sources mention that during the early days of Line 1, some citizens from rural areas would literally take their shoes off and leave them on the platform before stepping onto the train.
Because in Korean culture, you take your shoes off before entering a clean home.
Exactly.
They treated this massive piece of public machinery like a clean living room, and a little paper ticket cost just 31 back then. But beyond the sheer novelty, this piece of technology fundamentally rewired South Korean society. There's this concept mentioned in the sources called Korean time.
Yes, Korean time. It referred to a cultural habit of chronic lateness.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Before the subway, traffic was so unpredictable and the buses were so unreliable that being 30 minutes or even an hour late to a meeting or a gathering was just expected. You literally couldn't help it.
Traffic was just that bad.
But the subway brought absolute to-the-minute punctuality. It arrived exactly when it said it would arrive.
So what does this all mean? It tells us that infrastructure dictates culture.
Very much so. The subway didn't just change how people traveled, it actually changed their psychology. It forced an entire society to become synchronized to the minute. If you were late now, it was your fault, not the traffic's.
What's fascinating here is how these transit quirks became permanent cultural fixtures. The subway birthed entirely new social behaviors.
Like what?
For instance, Exit 1 of major stations became the universal meeting spot for dates or business meetings before cell phones existed.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. If you were meeting a friend in a crowded district, you didn't need an exact address. Everyone knew to just meet at Exit 1 of the local station.
The ultimate analog meeting point. Oh, and the newspaper culture.
Yes?
Our sources mention this very polite, uniquely Korean subway etiquette in the early decades, where commuters would read their morning newspaper on the train and then carefully fold it and leave it on the overhead luggage rack so the next passenger could read it.
It was this quiet, communal sharing system built entirely around the rhythm of the daily commute. It's a beautiful era of transit culture. But we also have to acknowledge the evolution of safety and environment.
Right, it wasn't all perfect.
As the decades passed and the population surged, the open platforms became a hazard in a crowded megacity. Tragically, track accidents and suicides were all too common.
They were. But the introduction of those glass screen doors you mentioned at the beginning, which, by the way, Seoul implemented on a massive system-wide scale far faster than most global cities, completely ended those tragedies.
Just wiped them out.
Exactly. And furthermore, they drastically improved the air quality on the platforms by sealing out the fine tunnel dust.
Which brings us right back to you, the foreign visitor stepping onto the platform today, marveling at how clean and futuristic it all is. When you look at the statistics from the past 50 years, they are genuinely mind-blowing.
Oh, they're staggering.
Since that tragic opening day in 1974, the Seoul subway has carried 92 billion passengers.
Just to put that into perspective for you, that is 180 times the entire population of South Korea.
Unbelievable. And the trains have traveled a combined 91 million kilometers. That is enough distance to circle the Earth over 2,200 times.
Wow.
It grew from a single line with just 9 stations to a sprawling 950-kilometer network with 275 stations.
It's a testament to national determination. I mean, a system built by a desperately poor country, initially funded by terrifying foreign debt, driven by Cold War paranoia, and carved out with cut-and-cover trenches, has legitimately become the gold standard for global urban transit.
So to you, our listener, the next time you're visiting Seoul, or if you're lucky enough to live there, take a moment to look past the glowing Wi-Fi routers and the spotless hotel-like bathrooms.
Yeah, look a little deeper.
When those sleek glass screen doors slide open, remember the history standing right in front of you. Remember the people who respectfully took off their shoes to board.
Remember the mole mayor covered in dirt.
The bulldozer drawing a map with a colored pencil, the screeching curve bent around the newspaper building, and the sheer, undeniable grit it took to build all of this from absolutely nothing.
You know, this raises an important question for us to leave on.
What's that?
The Seoul subway evolved from a desperate geopolitical flex into the literal circulatory system that keeps a massive megacity alive. But it is now 50 years old.
Right.
It's an aging infrastructure facing an incredibly complex future, with dramatic demographic shifts, a rapidly aging population that rides for free, and the relentless march of new AI and automation technologies. One really has to wonder, how will this massive subterranean web adapt and mutate to survive its next 50 years?
Will the transit utopia of tomorrow look as different to us as the screen doors would to the people of 1974? It is a fascinating thought. Keep that in mind the next time you tap your transit card. Until next time, thanks for diving deep into the sources with us.